What's going on, guys? Welcome back to review and discussion for UnOrdinary. I know it's been quite a long break from this, longer than I anticipated, but it's time to finally get back into this, and unfortunately, we are going to be starting off with the chapter that almost made me take a break from UnOrdinary, honestly, episode 264. And, yeah, this one's going to be really short, really brief. There's not really much to talk about in this chapter. A lot happens in this chapter, but also at the same time, like, not a whole lot happens. And I've already talked about, a lot of my feelings about this chapter in my reactions and everything, since those have come out, since more chapters have come out since I'm recording this. So let's just go ahead and get like the bare bones review and everything for this episode out. Now, episode starts with John getting the disabler injected into him. And, he clearly gets his hands on Terrence, and he starts to kind of go after him and everything. And then Blake and Ison also realize that their full power is starting to come back more. So it's cool. We get confirmation. We get confirmation that currently the dampener lasts for about an hour, and then the Spectre people start to kind of like back off. But Blake and Ison just say like, nah, fuck that shit. Like, you guys are going down. Like, we're gonna make sure you can't. And that was a pretty cool scene. Like, I think it kind of shows there's a little bit of John in everyone, because if this had been the past, I think everyone would have been like, no, John, don't do anything. Like, we've already won. They're backing off. Just let them go. But instead, they did not take it nearly as far as John does with Terrence later on. Or as John would have taken it with Terrence. But they do say, like, nah, get fucked. This is our time now. And, they just say, like, fuck you. Like, we're beating the shit out of you. So Serafina, Arlo, and Remy show up. And Sarah's looking at everything, like, assessing the situation. And she knows that there's 2 needles that haven't not been used yet. And she's asking, where's John? Is everything okay? Now, cut to John and John chasing after Terrence, and Terrence mentions that also covering for 4 people is exhausting. We'll get to that later. So John locks on to Terrence. He gets a hold of Ison's ability now, and John essentially just he finds Terrence. He beats the shit out of Terrence, and he until the very end, John makes sure that Terrence doesn't get away. Now, a bit of his darker self, as I will say, does leak out in this. Like, Ura has been showing, like, when John loses control, there's like the shadow covering his face, and his eyes are just glowing. We got a glimpse of that again when John was like above Terrence, and but at the end, I feel John made sure that Terrence didn't get away, that Terrence would be captured. And, it does show to the end, John is a fighter. And I think that was a really admirable trait to show. Like, John wasn't necessarily, it's kind of a mixed bag, I think, actually. I don't think John was really, trying to make sure that Terrence didn't get away for the sake of the others. More so just like, this guy's been fucking with Sarah this whole time. And he's like, I'm going to make sure that this fucker goes down. So I just felt it was pretty admirable to see John. Like, he was falling unconscious. And when this happened to Sarah way back when, she was just trying her best to get away. And, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. That is not trying to, like, me dig at Sarah or anything. I'm just saying, like, Sarah's focus was more so just getting away, making sure that, like, she got out of that situation. And she did, thankfully. John's whole thing was just like, as we've seen countless times again, to the bitter end, John will always be a fighter, and he will always go down swinging. So I did enjoy that. Now, I want to talk about Terrence. Specifically, I want to talk about how I personally feel Terrence is a terrible villain. And I'm not saying terrible on the scale of Keon, on the scale of Vulcan, Valerie, on the scale of, Zeke. I personally feel that Terrence is just a badly executed villain. Horribly executed. Now, the reason why I feel this is because his reasons for everything that he reveals to Sarah is just so completely, I feel, is completely backwards and everything. Now, let me pull up, let me try to pull up his monologue from this episode real quick, because he mentions oh, you high tiers are all the same, blah blah blah, you need to be put on a leash immediately. And I feel like this kind of stuff, I feel like Uru had a lot of ideas for Terrence, but is having a hard time picking which ones to use, or using too many. Because I'm gonna be honest, and I said this before, I don't think that I don't think that Uru knew Terrence was gonna be this important at the start of the series. I don't think she knew that, considering that he was supposedly at the Corovo Mall incident. I think she definitely had an idea. Yes, I think Terrence is part of this kind of shady organization type thing. But when he was first introduced and everything before that, I don't think she had an idea. Because before, Terrence was just a kid that John saved. He was a kid that John saved from a bully, and he clearly had a reaction from that, and he ran off. And then, he was kind of hey, we need to get John to be he was what I'm gonna call original Dylan, John fanboy, hey, John's king of Wellston, we need to follow John because he's cooler than Arlo. But then all this Spectre stuff started happening with Terrence, and he started to get a little more mysterious. He started to get pretty interesting as a character, and beyond just being oh, mysterious reporter student who knows a lot more information than he probably should. And that, I feel like that got a lot of people interested. But the more that just kept getting added and revealed about him, just kind of, in my opinion, just kept making him worse, just a worse character. Because if we go back to episode 205, when he gets a phone call from assumably Layla, we see that he's writing up reports to send to Spectre and everything, and he's covering Sarah, everyone from Sarah to Zeke is who he's reporting on. And under John, he says, no, don't recruit him. John is brutal. John is he's repressive, he's aggressive and violent. Completely said, do not recruit John whatsoever. And in this episode 264, he's just ha ha ha, we were after John the whole time, and now we have another powerful servant at our disposal. And don't get me wrong, the reveal that Terrence, well, specifically Spectre, had calculated all this about John, who was their main goal, that was a pretty interesting reveal. It's just doesn't necessarily work, because again, Terrence's whole thing with John was, no, I thought we should have recruited him soon, before, but we should not recruit him whatsoever. This will not work out. And then he goes to Sarah and he's we've gained yet another powerful servant, and there's nothing you could do about it. So it's okay, well, which is it? Did you not want him recruited, or were you after him the whole time then, Terrence? And this also really makes it hard to guess what Spectre's true goals are. Now, I get it. Uru has already planted the seed, oh, there's a big divide in Spectre right now. One side wants this, one side wants that. And it's just, it was a cool concept, but unfortunately it doesn't look like it's not being executed well, in my opinion. Because, yeah, I'm sure that Layla does not want to like, you know, take over society and everything with high tiers on a leash and everything. But if there was supposed to be kind of like this moral ambiguity with Spectre and, like, you know, the teams within Spectre, you know, the different like factions and everything, maybe don't have the first big thing that we see them do be attacking a group of high school students, a group of children. Like, maybe don't do that if you want us to, like, feel some sort of moral ambiguity with Spectre. And, you know, maybe she wasn't feeling that. Maybe, like, you know, like, maybe that wasn't Uru's intentions. Maybe, like, now she is trying to show, like, actually, no, there is no moral ambiguity with Spectre. Like, you shouldn't root for them at all. But, like, yeah. It's also weird because it's like, originally Terrence was reporting to Layla, assumedly, but now he's definitely working for the guy who, like, wanted to keep an eye on Sarah and everything. So I don't know. The more this Spectre arc is going on, the worse it's also getting at the same time. I feel like it's just like, you do some things right, you do a lot of things right, Uru, but you also do stuff like this, and the stuff like this I'm not really jiving with, if I'm being honest. And then, like I mentioned before with Terrence, going back to him being kind of an awful character, it's just with John's hatred of high tiers, it made sense. It made perfect, well, not necessarily perfect sense. With John's hatred of high tiers, it made a lot of sense, because even before we saw glimpses of John's past, we saw glimpses of him being lied to, that repeating that experience with Arlo, we saw glimpses, so we knew why John hated high tiers. But as the story more progressed, we showed, like, it's not that John hates high tiers, it's that John hates himself, and he thinks he's doomed to fail. And he is projecting that onto others. He's refusing to see reality, that people have changed. And, you know, it made sense. And John started to learn from it. John started to get better. Terrence doesn't get that excuse. He doesn't. I feel that he shouldn't. Because Terrence's whole thing is, because it goes back to, like, you know, the monologue he was giving Sarah. You high tiers are all the same. You only care about, like, you're all disloyal. You're all like this, blah, 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 blah. Like, you all need to be restrained. You all need to be put on a leash. And so, he's been witnessing everything at Wellston unfold. Terrence is like the inner circle to Wellston. He saw that Remy was a great candidate. Like, at the end of the day, if he had said something along the lines of, like, high tiers like you and John are all the same, like, that would have been much better. But he said, you high tiers are all the same. Remy is also a high tier. The girl who finally started to do something and, like, hold accountability for her actions and her, like, and for her, like, lack of realization before, she's finally doing something. She's finally trying to make the school better. She's finally protecting the people who you pretended to be friends with and, like, let your goons threaten to kill. Like, she's been protecting them along with Blake and Ison. Now, granted, you know, you can't, yeah, it says high tiers. Actually, no, Blake has to be included in that list now too. So yeah, fuck you, Terrence. Yeah, I feel like this chapter was definitely against Terrence's favor. And hopefully we never have to see him again, because Sarah actually finally does something for one. Well, no, that's not fair. Sarah's been doing a lot lately. Sarah's been doing a hell of a lot lately. But Sarah does what I feel is probably her coolest moment yet in the series thus far, and she's just like, nah, fuck you, bitch. And she disables Terrence. One of the disablers that she got hold of, she's just like, boom, injects it into Terrence, and she's just like, nah, you're fucked. And spoiler alert for next episode, Terrence probably, or for episode 255, Terrence probably isn't that big a threat anymore because he was brought into custody. So hopefully we don't see him ever again anymore. We probably will, if I'm being honest, though. Let's be real. But he's disabled. If Spectre does get their hands on him again, he probably will get his ability back in some limited capacity. But yeah, Sarah was just like, Sarah completely does a U-turn on like what she said before. Going back to episode... going back to episode 214? 214? Let's, probably not this one. 215. Yep, episode 215, when her and Arlo and Layla were fighting off Spectre goons who had tailed them. Sarah back then said, no one deserves to live like this. But she just completely says, like, I used to think that nobody deserved to have their ability taken from them, but I was wrong. And she said Spectre doesn't deserve to exist. And that was cool. It was cool to see Sarah in, like, a John-like moment. Just, like, complete anger, complete aggression. Just, like, I'm gonna burn. It was Sarah's moment of when John was like, I'm gonna destroy your hierarchy. And Sarah just like, I'm gonna make sure Spectre doesn't exist ever again. So that was cool. It was a really nice and cool moment to see of like Sarah in an actual rage. Chapter just ends off with John waking up in the hospital, at Wellston Hospital specifically. And, you know, he's clearly kind of like, still affected and everything. He's got a nice little bouquet given to him from the safe house. And Sarah at his bedside. And that's how the episode ends. And then we got bonus. We got bonus for a lot of things. The two abilities that we really cared about that weren't just like repeats of stuff we've seen before were Spikes from the purple hair girl fighting Arlo and Remy, and then Sleep Touch from the guy who like knocked Arlo unconscious. Now, Spike's girl was a 3.2 while Sleep Touch was a 3.5, so he was an elite tier. And then, just to add to the dumpster fire that is Terrence as a character, we got the ability reveal for Terrence. And this is where I also want to call bullshit. So, Terrence's ability, as we've all guessed, is invisibility. And he is and actually, I just noticed, he has level 10 trick. He has 10 trick just like John. That is actually pretty interesting, if I'm being honest. But his ability level is 4.4. Now, I want to call bullshit on that because, yeah, it is just invisibility, but I feel like someone, and again, like I've said before, Uru knows how her ability system works. She clearly knows a lot more than I do. Uru has put in a lot of thought and consideration into how it would work. But I do feel like someone who has that level, like an ability like that, invisibility, can assumedly use it for so long. You know, he used it to follow John and Sarah way back when they were coming home from the mall. I feel like he really should be a high tier, especially since he's able to cover for 4 people. Now, granted, it probably didn't last that long, if we're being honest. They did like get revealed fairly easily. But I just kind of feel like Terrence should probably be like a high tier, if we're being honest. Like, I don't know. I feel like for what he did that episode, I feel like that's something that a high tier should be capable of. That's just me. So all in all, I honestly I'm going to give this chapter level 5, honestly. Like, it's not terrible. It has a lot. Well, no, it has some really good moments for what it is, but also just like all this stuff with Terrence, I feel does really drag this episode down, in my opinion. So, yeah. I mean, clearly I'm still reading, you know, like I said before, there are going to be some episodes that I'm going to be very disappointed with, and this bunch of episodes just unfortunately are ones I am disappointed with. So there's that. So yeah. With all that being said though, guys, let me know what you thought about the comments down below in the comments down below. I'm not excited for another Cripple arc. And honestly, I do feel that Uru's kind of at a lost situation in this. For me personally, I don't speak for everyone, but it's just because if John gets his ability back too quickly, what was the point of disabling him to begin with? If he gets it back, too late, like if it takes another season's worth of episodes like it did with Sarah, which I doubt it will, then it's just like, holy shit, why are we going through another Cripple arc? And, like I said, it's very disappointing because this is John's third time being a cripple in his life. Like, whether or not you want to count the beginning of the series, I do, because yeah, John did just decide to put himself through all that shit. Like, we've already gotten a full cripple arc through Sarah. We already had John's cripple arc at the beginning of the series. Like, I'm not excited for it, but the next few episodes, they do, I feel, make up for this episode and episode 263. So this episode, level 5, if I'm being honest, it's fine. It's a fine episode. I don't like it myself, but, does some things right, does a lot of things wrong. But yeah, that will be it for this review and discussion, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Episode 265 review and discussion is coming out very soon. So until then, you guys, see you, Space Cowboy.